friends, welcome to A Scrappy Little Joy. I'm Pam. Today is our block 7 for the Weekly Whim, if you can believe it. This is our block. It's called a turning point. I had to remember. And there's a reason that we're calling it a turning point. This is, I think, the block that is really going to allow us to start seeing some major anchor points in our blocks, or in our, as we see our blocks start to come together. The other thing about this first of all, here's our block. Here is all of the fabrics that I'm using. And for those of you who are new here, every week we have our box where we take some of the fabrics that we have used in previous blocks and we may add in a few more fabrics. I'm getting to a point where I'm adding fewer and fewer fabrics, and I'm trying to now access more of the fabrics in my box. If I'm running low on a fabric in my box, I can always pull in another fabric that's similar enough in color, and that's the thing. The more fabrics, the better. So what I have is, let's see, 4 of the fabrics are previous fabrics. So these are previous fabrics. And then I have 3 new fabrics in my stash. So I'm going to pop those in my box and tuck them underneath. A couple of things. This is a unique block because it's going to involve a bonus block. We are going to have our Weekly Whim this week here on Wednesday. We're also going to have a block on Saturday. Our block 8 will release on Saturday. And we are going to be using components from this block for that block. So stick around, stick with me. We're going to get started. Remember that down in the description, for those of you who are new, you will find our cutting instructions for the fabrics that we're using. Also, there is for those who need a little tile sheet, you can print that and use it for your fabrics. The first thing that we're going to look to do, if we look at our layout here, let's go ahead and start with our E and F units, okay? We're going to start with kind of an easier unit, and then we're going to move to a little bit, and I don't want to say it's a harder unit, but it's a more involved unit. And I'm going to take my shoes off as I do. Okay, let's go ahead, if we can, just go ahead and lay our fabrics out. Starting to lay our fabrics out, I'm using my design mat. Friends, did you see the tutorial for these? It was super, super popular, and I was so excited about that. I made all of them. All of the samples that I was making with, remember I did a step and then I did another step and I did another step and I had a whole bunch of them. Okay, I've got so many things planned out here that I've been working on today. But I just wanted to share with you, I got all of them made. I got all the binding on all of them. I finished them all. So I'm very excited about that. Okay, so we are going to start with our fabrics E and F. And my E goes on the outside. Your E goes on the outside as well. Oh, well, isn't that handy? I do believe that needs to be 3.5 inches if I recall. And it probably is exactly 3.5 inches because it's cut on the fold. Let's see. Green fabric on a green mat. A bit tricky. There we go. Let's just double check. Yep, 3.5. Okay. So our fabric E goes on the outside. This is a little bit too small of a mat, but it's the biggest one I have. And these go like this. So what we first want to do is join our fabric E to our fabric F. Friends, scant 1/4 inch. It's kind of a gotta on this one. Alrighty, let's get started. Good morning, Jane. Good afternoon, Jane. What time is it? It's afternoon. It's getting a little cloudy out. It was quite sunny earlier today. I'm going to have to refresh my memory which way we want to press these. I know there was a specific way that I pressed them. And I waited, when I made my sample, I waited until I got a little further down the pike, and then I decided. But if I tell you now, then that'll be fine too. Okay, leaders and enders time. My snippies. Also, I meant to mention, burned my hand moving my iron. How many times have you done that? And it was like I was moving the iron like from here to here, and I couldn't set it down fast enough. So yeah, it's a little uncomfortable. Okay, I am pressing toward the fabric E, okay, to the outside. So let's just do that real quick so that we can keep ourselves moving, because this being a larger block, it's going to take us just a little bit longer. And if we have opportunities here where Mr. Woods can zippy through, I will make sure that I call him out to do that. Okay, so these are all here. And we also know that this is our fabric G goes in the center, doesn't it? Okay. So we can just put that there because we're going to need that. Next up is the more involved part, and I have made a little tricky trick here for these units because we have some lining up that we want to do. Now you will remember that, I'm not sure if it says, yep, you're going to want a diagonal line on the back of each of your fabric D and your fabric B. And my fabric B, your fabric B, our fabric B squares go with our fabric A rectangles, and our fabric D go with our fabric C. So let's tuck those over there. And what we're going to do is position this is some directional fabric. I'm not going to worry too much about my directionals with this, but if you have directionals, then, you know, I'm not sure. These are all going to kind of turn around. So I'm not going to really focus on directionals today. I am going to put my unit in the upper right-hand corner, so that my diagonal is going this way. And there's a special way that I want you to sew this for an easier way. See, this is going to be a stitch and flip corner here, and we are going to want this to go this way. If we do it this way, we're going to be going the wrong way. So let's line up all of our fabric B's, fabric C and D, and fabric A and B in the same way. And if you need to just double check, you're going to be turning this back here. We're going to be trimming this off, okay? So I'm going to do that here. I've got some cute little mice on this fabric, which is why I pulled it in. It's a little bit brighter. This green is a little bit brighter, isn't it? But I said, you know what? I feel like being brave. I'm going to do it. It's one of my favorite colors, and I don't use it enough. So let's see. That guy goes there. And this guy goes here. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we want to sew on the diagonal, on this diagonal line. But you're going to want to start on this corner, but I'm going to recommend that you start here. And the reason is because if I start right in this corner, as my needle goes right into that seam, or right into that fabric, it's going to take that little point right into the hole of my machine. But if we start on this side, we're starting with an edge. So let's try that. So what I'm going to do, let's just go ahead and sew this first seam together. And we are going to sew right on that line. Normally I will say sew over just a little bit toward the corner. In this case, we're going to be pressing this. We are pressing this open, I believe. Yes, we are going to be pressing this open, so it doesn't matter. Right on that line. Okay. Okay, so I've gone right on that diagonal line. I'm going to do that for all of the rest of these, and I'm going to let Mr. Woods zippy through this part. So once you're done sewing all of your diagonal lines on all of your A and C units, we'll come back together and we'll trim, because I've got some thoughts about that as well. Very important thoughts about that, so make sure that you're stopping with that. Okay, so let me just snip these apart, and then we're going to talk about how we are going to join these together. We're going to join one of each unit to the other to form our corner squares. But I've had to do it kind of a tricky way to make it easier for us to line things up. So what I want you to do, though, this is where I want you to be really thoughtful about how you're trimming these, because we are going to be using these trim offs for our next block, among other things. So I want you to be very thoughtful to take an exact 1/4 of an inch, cut this at exactly 1/4 of an inch from the seam, okay? And I want you to set these in a neat little tidy spot so that they stay together, okay? So in ordinary circumstances, I would probably stack several of these together and just cut, knowing that all I really needed to do is make sure I had a 1/4 of an inch here. Well, I need these to be the same size as well, otherwise that's not going to work. Can we get around that? Yes, we will be able to get around that for block 7. If for some reason the dog should chew up your little leftover triangles between now and Saturday. Okay, so these little guys, we are going to sorry, thinking ahead. These little guys, as I said, we are going to press them open because we want them to be nice and flat. I am going to very carefully put these on one of my new design mats. Aha! And that little guy, this little guy, is going to wait right up there for me for the moment. Let's go ahead. I'm going to take these over to the iron and press open. I'm going to let Mr. Woods zippy through here. You go ahead and press, and then we'll meet back. Okay, here we are. See, I like them to cool. I'm always afraid they're going to warp my rotary mat if I'm not careful. Okay, so what we're going to do, let's bring this back over so that we can start to visualize where these are going to go together, where these are going to be. Let's look at our illustration. What we are going to need, I kind of wanted this guy up. Let's see, is there a way I can make him? No, there isn't. There isn't a way I can make him upside right. All right. Okay, so that one goes there, and then this one goes here. There, he'll be upside right in that spot. And then here, he can be right here, my little mouse. And then here, I need this one to go this way. Okay, so then this one goes this way. This one goes this way. So are you starting to pick up the vibe here? What we're going to need to do is line these points up, line these parts up. And it's going to be like, what? How are we going to do that? And the original trimming instructions made it rather difficult. But I made a modification to our trimming, or to our cutting size of our units. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to grab whichever two. And then I want you to just lay them on top of each other, okay? And have your pin cushion handy, because then what I want you to do is fold back, make sure I'm right in the middle here, fold back the top one to about 1/4 of an inch, okay? And then I want you to just take it over here, and I want you to slide it so that it's laying, so these lines, these seams are laying right up next to each other. Can you see that? Okay. And then I want you to lay that flat, make sure you're right up to the edge, and see, this is why we wanted these seams pressed open, because they're nice and flat together. And then I want you to pop a little pin in there. And then you're going to look at this and you're going to go, Pam, have you lost your marbles? Look at all this hang off on each end. I know, I did it on purpose. So let me sew this one, and then I will show you why. Okay? You're going to sew this at your scant 1/4 inch just like normal. Okay? And then we'll come back together and I'll show you what we're going to do. Okay, so now I want to press these toward, I believe it is toward the CD unit, okay? We're going to press toward that. And as you see this, you're going to go, wow, pretty cool. My seams, my diagonal seams line up pretty close anyway. Mine aren't perfect, but they are a whole lot better than they would have been had I cut this the way my initial instructions suggested. And this is where we sometimes have to just give ourselves a little cheat room, and that's what I did here. This unit, this corner unit here, needs to be 6.5 inches. So I lengthened these because I was having trouble lining them all up and also getting this where I needed it to be. So I said, that's okay. We'll just give some extra room this way. We'll just give ourselves a little wiggle. And I'm going to trim on this side. Okay, and look, we are at 6.5 inches. Now, mind you, I am a lefty, so here we are. We're the opposite, but this is 6.5 inches. And then I'm just going to take that edge off. Look, and there it is. Okay, so now I am going to do the other 3 units. You go ahead and do the same. I will press mine, and you will press yours toward the CD unit, and then we'll come back together and we'll move into our next step, because there's multiple other components to how we're putting this together. So thank you for your patience. And if you just need a little extra reminder, go ahead and just rewind just a smidgy to go back over that, but I'll go ahead and keep moving along so that we can keep this going comfortably. Okay, friends, now we're back, and let me just get these positioned where they need to live. This little guy goes there, this little guy goes there, and this little guy goes right there. Okay, so now what we have are our usual columns, okay? Got to kind of spread them out over this. So I'm going to sew this column, and then this column. And then we're going to start to see why we pressed in the directions that we pressed. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to line up, and you'll see, because we pressed our center units, our EF units, and pressed toward the F, or toward the E, and we pressed this one toward this one, they're going to nest real nice. Okay, so I'm going to sew this column together, and this column together, and Mr. Woods can zippy through this, and you can do that part, and then we'll come back together after that. Okay, so there are all 3 columns all ready to go. As normal, I'm going to do what I always do and press this way, and this way, and this way for my seam allowances. But remember, we're also going to have some other seam allowances that are pressed in a different direction, so we're probably going to want to pin this part a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and just press those 2 center seams, which are lying so comfortably next to one another because we have nested their seams, or at least the one seam that joins because it's the direction. But see, these are going this way, but this one is going up. So it's going to vary a little bit on the both sides. And then this one, what did I say? This one's going up, or this way toward me. But again, the fabric E units are pressed toward the fabric E units, those seams. And then these will go down. Okay, so we're going to sew these together, and I'm going to get to the other end. I will sew this to this, this to this. I will probably sew my seam allowances open. That I sewed them to one side with this block, but I think I would rather do it open because there are a lot of seams here. So I'm going to press this open. Make sure you stick around to the end because I want to talk with you about our block 8 bonus block that's coming up, and it's actually not just one block, and I'm going to give you some hints about that in a minute. So go ahead and sew your unit together and press your long seams open, and then we'll come back together. Mr. Woods can zippy here. Ta-da! Here we are. Okay, so here is our block 7 block. Now we need to talk about these little triangles here. Let me check my instructions for what I put together for my next block. In terms of what, okay, yeah. So we are going to sit tight with these as they are, okay? Try to keep them in a safe place until Saturday, and we will come back together with our bonus blocks, and we'll talk about how we're going to assemble these. And for now, we're running out of room, but I'm going to tuck that there. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed block 7 for our weekly whim, and I'm looking forward to one more block on Saturday for block 8. So stick with me, and we'll see you then.